So today I wanted to talk a little bit of implicit biases. So today, if you've been following recent news, you've probably realized that there's been some sort of fear in talking about issues of race, especially with this political hostility. And although people have taken more of a social lens, I'd kind of like to take more of a psychological lens. So that being said, today I really want to delve in and really kind of see whether we're all inherently racist. And if so, how this may impact us in our everyday lives. Cool. So as a quick kind of starter, I want you to think of 3 of your closest friends, not including any significant others, if you do have. So think of your 3 closest friends. Go. Okay? Okay. So I've thought of 3 of my closest friends, me, myself, and I. I have a question now to you. Just raise your hand if the statement is true. So majority of my friends are either racially or ethnically similar to me. So if the statement holds true, just raise your hand. Oh, okay, so a lot of people actually were shocked. Basically there was a survey conducted by the National Longitudinal Study of Adolescent Health, and they found that in adolescence, go figure, that they were choosing friends who were ethnically or racially similar to them without even realizing. Now, this kind of has some sort of relation to our brain. So our brain is efficient. We are constantly using mechanisms, both conscious and unconscious, to help us understand the world around us. Oh, no, what happened? Okay, to constantly understand the world around us. So one of these mechanisms is categorization. So we categorize items, we categorize food, and we also categorize people. And we categorize people based on how closely they resemble us. So if we have our friend Tim over here, and he's categorizing people based on how they resemble him, this group of people who look most like him is what we refer to as his in-group. And those who refer, maybe not so much looked at like a little bit different, we refer to as his out-group. Now, what really starts to get the ball rolling is that we have this inherent bias for people who are in our in-group. And this stems from the fact that we basically want a positive self-image for ourselves, and this positive self-image is derived from our in-group. Now, this definitely has some sort of evolutionary context. So in evolutionary history, in our hunter-gatherer society, our in-groups were the people that we could trust. They were the people that were in our environment. And individuals who were more cautious about trusting or distrusting people were more likely to survive and pass on their genes, which was essentially the role of evolution. Now, basically, this inherent distrust of people is what helped individuals survive. Now, unfortunately, we do have some sort of out-group bias as well. So out-groups, we categorize in the same group, we generalize them together, so unfortunately, we make stereotypes about these individuals. And so this can show itself in more recent contexts, like the racial profiling of African-American individuals in the United States, as well as the labeling of Muslim individuals as terrorists. Now, this is unfortunate because it's also perpetuated by the media, fake news and all. So it's just further perpetuated, and unfortunately we've only been targeting a very specific aspect of this racism. We've been talking a lot about our conscious mind, what we are able to realize. Now, we have another part of our mind, and this is our Freudian diagram of our unconscious. So in our unconscious mind, we also have these biases. And these biases are something that we don't necessarily realize. So they kind of wanted to see whether or when these racial biases might start. So look at this little cute baby. So they did a little survey or a quick study on 3-month-old babies. And they found that these 3-month-old babies were actually able to tell the difference between individuals who were ethnically similar to them and those who were ethnically not. And these could probably be related to evolution, but we've also been shown to have some sort of social context. So they also did studies on school-age children, and they found that children in kindergarten already had very deeply ingrained stereotypes about African-American peoples, about women and other social groups, and children who were in the 2nd and 3rd grade already had adult-like concepts of what race was. So you might think, oh, like me, like I have these implicit biases. Well, unfortunately, we all do. So they did a study to see whether this was held true. So they took white physicians and they wanted to see how they were prescribing individuals to those who were racially congruent and racially incongruent. So in this case, both white patients and black patients. So although these white physicians stated they had no explicit biases, the results showed otherwise. So they found that 76% of white patients were being prescribed anesthetics, while only 57% of black patients were being prescribed anesthetics for the same exact condition. So they standardized it across the simple fracture. So unfortunately, even though they did say that they didn't have any explicit biases, these implicit biases showed otherwise. Now you might be thinking, okay, if they're so deeply ingrained, like how can we solve this? Well, there are two possible solutions that we can use. So the first thing is awareness. Awareness is the first most important step. So being able to take your implicit biases and make them conscious. So bringing them to our explicit mind. By doing that, we're able to realize our own personal biases and then work to diminish them. The second thing that we can do is exposure. And by exposure, I mean being present and talking to individuals who are diverse, okay? So they also found that if they had babies who showed this ethnic bias, if they introduced them to diverse peoples at such a young age, it was able to reduce the start of these implicit biases. So a social intervention like that was able to basically, again, just decrease these biases. So diversity is super duper important. Now, I think that it's so important that we're talking about this, and that especially in today's society with our friend Mr. Donald Trump over there. So it is super duper relevant. It's important that we're first looking at these psychological underpinnings, understanding where they're coming from, and being able to recognize them and then work to basically just be able to determine our own personal beliefs. So with that, I ask that you look first within yourself, because the society, I mean, the solution is not in the greater society. The solution starts with you. It starts with me, it starts with you, and it starts with all of us. So in order for us to be able to have such a lovely, lovely society that we hope one day to have, we have to start with ourselves. And hopefully our children and their children will be able to live in a society that is both fair and grounded on equity. So thank you very much.